Hi, I'm Jeremy Caplan, and I write the Wonder Tools newsletter. I'm really excited to share with you today NotebookLM, giving you an inside picture of how to make the most of it, how it works, and what you can do with it. NotebookLM is a AI-powered notebook, basically. You can add sources of various different kinds. You can add PDFs, you can add documents, Word documents, Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides. You can also add audio files, YouTube links. You can add any kind of websites. There's almost anything that you want to add, you can. The files can be up to 200 megabytes in size. You can add 50 of them in a free notebook if you're using a free NotebookLM account. If you have a paid account, you can add up to 300 sources. But even the free account does almost everything you need to do. And you can have 100 different notebooks in your free account, which is one of the reasons why NotebookLM is amazing. And one of the new things you can do is add sources that NotebookLM suggests. So if you don't have your own material, if you're starting from scratch, you can use its guided suggestions to fill up your notebook. Once you've added sources to the notebook, you can explore. And I'll show you this in a moment in a real case. You can explore by using a chat interface. You can find key details in your notebooks. It will search using natural language processing. So it's only going to find the material that's actually in your notebook. It's not searching the web. It's not searching its data training set. It's just searching the grounded materials that you've given it, that you've uploaded. And it's going to give you citations. So you can go back to the section in your sources where that original material was found. Once you find a result in your exploration, in your chat, your query, you can save that as a note in your notebook to return to later. You can identify connections between your various documents. You can search individual documents or all of the documents in your notebook. You can find connections between them. You can also search for abstract kinds of concepts like surprising elements or specific kinds of facts or specific kinds of statistics. It's not just looking for keywords, which other kinds of search tools do. Instead, it's using natural language processing. And finally, in addition to adding sources and exploring the sources, you can create really interesting material out of these materials that are in your notebook. So you can create audio and video summaries. You can create slide decks and infographics. Those are the newest features, which I'll show you. You can also create quizzes and flashcards, and you can create reports and mind maps. There's 8 different kinds of materials you can create with NotebookLM. So in a nutshell, that is how NotebookLM works. There's these 3 sections: the source panel, the exploration panel, and the studio panel. Now let's look at an actual example. This is a public NotebookLM notebook, and it's created by Eric Topol. You'll see here on the left side, you've got all the different sources, and you can look at a source and you can see the full text of the source and a summary of the source. You can also search for sections within that source. In the middle section here, we have a summary of all the material, all the 17 sources. And then we have options for pre-suggested searches we can type, or we can type in our own search query to find material in this collection of documents in this public notebook. And then here are studio outputs. So there's a video that we can watch. There are audio previews. There are reports that are generated. I want to show you an example of a notebook that I have created. This is a simple one, just one really good source so far. And that source in this simple notebook gives me a summary. I can add additional sources, and I can look over here on the right at all of the different things that I've generated. So for example, here's an infographic about the life of Gustav Mahler, for example, that NotebookLM generated. Here is a slide deck that NotebookLM generated, which is really well designed and based on a prompt that I gave it to direct its style of creation and the focus of its material and the audience that it was intended for. Now I can download this as a PDF really easily if I want to. I can share a link to it. If I share the notebook, I can also see the prompt again, and I can collapse the viewer and go back to the studio to look at the other items that I've generated, which include a note about Mahler's poetry inspiration. This is a short note. Some of the notes are longer than others. I'm going to show you another notebook I've created. This is one with many different sources. This is a notebook about NotebookLM. So this is a kind of a meta use case where I'm using NotebookLM to explore documents about NotebookLM so I can learn more about its features and capabilities. You can see here, there's a lot of different sources I've added, and I can, if I want to, inquire about any particular individual document just by choosing a document or subset of documents and then typing in a query, and it will just search that particular source that's highlighted, or I can search through all the sources or a subset. If I click on a source again, I can see what's actually in that source, and I can see more details about it. And then on the right-hand panel, I can see all the different things I've already created, and I can download them or share them. So I can't edit them, just to be clear about that. Once it's been created, I can't edit it, but I can create a new version of it based on a different subset of sources or with a different prompt. I'm going to show you each of these kinds of examples. Here's an audio piece.
This is the brief on NotebookLM. your AI research partner.
And that is, I can change the playback speed and I can download it. That is a brief audio overview. I can also look at a longer audio overview. This is for
Liability
example,
bluff.
this is a longer one that's focused on critiquing aspects of NotebookLM's limitations because I wanted to task NotebookLM to critique itself. Here's a video explainer that I generated. This is a slide deck that I generated about NotebookLM using the papercraft style, which is the one I highly recommend. You can see how elegant the slides are, and they all have the NotebookLM watermark in there, so you can make sure you're clear and transparent that this is an AI generated tool. You can see the prompt again if you want to. I used quite a detailed prompt in this case to get that result. And I encourage you to use detailed prompts, be specific about the color palette, the style, the intended audience, the specific areas of topics that you want to focus on. One thing that's amazing about NotebookLM is that you can customize it in many different ways. You can customize the type of chat you want it to use. You can customize each of the kinds of studio elements you're creating, whether it's an audio overview, a video overview, a mind map, a report, a flashcard, quiz, infographic, or slide deck. And then you can download any of that material and you can use it, repurpose it. Here's another example of another notebook that I created to learn about the topic of constructive dialogue. And I want to create a new notebook just to illustrate this process from scratch. So I'm going to, instead of uploading sources, I'm going to discover sources. So I'm going to use a query that I've pre-prepared, and it's going to allow me to search, basically using Gemini to search for high quality sources that meet the specifications of my prompt. And I can choose which of those sources to then incorporate into my notebook. You can see right now the notebook is completely blank. It's going to take a little bit of time to research the query that I've given it. And while we are waiting, we can actually now see the sources already here. I'm going to take a look at these sources. I can open up any of these sources to make sure this is a high quality source that I want to use. And in this case, I'm going to import these sources. It's going to take a minute to bring these sources into the notebook. It's going to summarize all of them. It's going to tell me what all these materials are about. They've all been tied to the various aspects of the prompt and query that I gave it to use to generate these sources. And I can start to look at these individual documents. This is a set of letters that Gustav Mahler wrote to his wife, Alma. And I can look at some of these other sources. There's a document about Mahler and Freud. Mahler visited Freud for some analysis. Here's an analysis of the Mahler symphonies. So you can see here, there's an abstract, and then I can see the actual document in here. I can see a summary of that document. And you can see here now, the 10 sources have been fully summarized in this chat panel. And there's a couple of suggested queries. So I can choose one of these queries just to illustrate how this works. It's going to find relevant info in this material that I've added to the notebook. These could have been materials that I uploaded myself. In this case, I used the fast search to gather some high quality sources to start with. It's sifting through the material. It's identifying the specific places in these materials where this information is referenced. And it's going to give me citations so I can go back and look at those actual documents to see more about this topic and about this. I'm also, while doing that, going to open up and create a mind map over here on the studio panel. And I'm going to generate a little report. There's several kinds of reports I can generate. I can generate a briefing document, which is just an overview or a study guide if I'm learning more, or it's going to suggest that maybe I want an explanatory essay or a scholarly article. In this case, I want a study guide, and I'm not going to customize it in this case just for time's sake, but I'm going to just get it going and have it generated. I'm also going to ask it to generate an infographic and a slide deck. I want a simple slide deck. I want a short one, and I want it to be a simple slide deck in the papercraft style aimed at a musical novice curious to learn more about Mahler. And I'm going to generate that. So I can have multiple of these being generated at the same time. They each take a few minutes. Now I'm going to look at the mind map to see some of the material that's in here. And I can look at Mahler's experience in New York specifically and decide which of these sections I'm particularly most interested in. I'm going to look at this overall section. And now it's going to give me more detail from the sources about Mahler's period in New York between 1907 and his death shortly thereafter. And I can go back in here and ask for further things or further explore these sections of the mind map. I can go back and see that I now have a study guide ready. So this report is now generated. I can copy this content, open up a new document, and now create a document version of this smaller study guide based on these materials, I can go back in here to the studio and now prepare something else. Maybe I want to prepare some flashcards, or maybe I want to prepare an audio overview. I'm going to create a brief audio summary, create an audio intro for students new to Mahler, putting his work and life in context. This is a generic prompt. I would generally use something much more detailed, but just to illustrate that process, you can see here it's now generated the infographic. So we can look at that and we can see that it's a nicely illustrated multicolor guide to a few key points about Mahler's life. And as with anything AI generated, you will always want to make sure to carefully fact check and read the details of what's here. In general, my experience so far has been that this works really quite well. I can download that and have it locally on my machine. I'm going to close this now, and you can see here that it's continuing to generate the audio overview and the slide deck, but you get a sense for how quickly these materials can be generated. The video overview also will be generated relatively quickly, and in a short period of time, I have a great number of resources now to help me understand this topic, to help me share the topic with other people. And that is really what's so exciting about NotebookLM. This is one of the most useful AI tools because it guides you along to engaging and interacting and making use of your material. It's all grounded in the actual material that you have given it or that you upload. And it doesn't hallucinate. It's grounded in the facts. It has citations that you can go back and validate. And it allows you to create these multimedia and multifaceted kinds of materials that no other single tool is able to do in the span of these kinds of materials, the slide decks of these kinds, the video and audio overviews of these kinds, the infographics of these kinds, all the different kinds of reports. These are really powerful aspects of NotebookLM, and all of that you can access completely for free on the free plan for NotebookLM, or you can use a slightly upgraded plan to have more notebooks and to have more sources. So that in a nutshell is NotebookLM, which again is the most useful free AI tool that I am using and recommending for you. I'd love to hear about how you're using Notebook, if you'd be open to sharing your own use cases and your own ways of using it.